The woman's body hit the dusty ground with a sickening thud just as the first rays of dawn broke over the Montana horizon, her fingers clawing weakly at the wooden gate post while blood seeped through her torn dress. Austin James had been up before sunrise, as was his habit for the past 15 years since he had built his ranch from nothing but determination and sweat. At 32, he had seen plenty of hardship in his life, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight of a woman collapsed at his gate, her dark hair matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood, her body trembling with exhaustion and fear. He ran from the barn, his boots kicking up clouds of dust as he crossed the distance between them. When he reached her, she flinched away from his touch, her green eyes wild with terror. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, I will do anything, just do not send me back. I am begging you for mercy." Austin knelt beside her slowly, keeping his movements gentle despite the urgency racing through his veins. "I am not going to hurt you, madam. Let me help you." She tried to push herself up but collapsed again, her strength completely spent. He could see now that she was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with delicate features that were currently marred by exhaustion and fear. Her dress was expensive once, he could tell, but now it was torn and stained beyond recognition. "You are home now," Austin said softly, carefully sliding his arms beneath her. "Nobody is going to hurt you here." She started to protest, but her body gave out entirely and she fell unconscious in his arms. He lifted her easily despite her weight and carried her toward the ranch house. His mind raced with questions, but those could wait. Right now, she needed water, food, and medical attention. The ranch house was modest but comfortable, built with strong timber and furnished with practical pieces that Austin had collected over the years. He carried her to his own bedroom, the only proper bed in the house, and laid her down gently on the quilt his mother had made before she passed. He fetched water from the pump and clean cloths from the kitchen, then returned to examine her injuries. There were bruises on her arms, cuts on her hands and feet, and what looked like rope burns on her wrists. His jaw tightened with anger at the sight, but he forced himself to stay calm and focused on cleaning her wounds. She stirred slightly as the cool water touched her skin, murmuring something he could not quite make out. He worked quickly but carefully, washing away the dirt and blood, treating the cuts with whiskey to prevent infection. She would need proper rest and nourishment before she could tell him what had happened to her. When he finished, he pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down, watching her breathe. The sun was fully up now, streaming through the window and illuminating her face. Despite the bruises and exhaustion, he could see she was beautiful with high cheekbones and full lips. But more than that, there was something about her that stirred something deep in his chest, something he had not felt in years. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. She was hurt and scared, and he was just being protective. That was all. Hours passed before she finally opened her eyes. He had dozed off in the chair, but her sudden gasp woke him instantly. She looked around the room wildly, her breathing rapid and panicked. "Easy now," Austin said, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You are safe here. I am Austin James, and this is my ranch outside White River, Montana." She stared at him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Finally, she relaxed slightly against the pillow. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Like I said, my ranch, about 5 miles outside White River. You collapsed at my gate this morning, begging for mercy. I brought you inside and tended to your wounds." Her hand went instinctively to her arm, touching the bandages he had wrapped around her cuts. "You helped me. Of course I did. What kind of man would I be if I left you there?" Tears filled her eyes suddenly, and she turned her face away. "Most men would not have cared." Well, I am not most men. He stood up and moved toward the door. You must be hungry. Let me get you something to eat, and then maybe you can tell me what happened to you. Wait, she called out, and he turned back. My name is Caroline Crawford, and thank you. I truly thought I would die out there. The name meant nothing to him, but the way she said it, with a mixture of pride and shame, suggested there was a story behind it. Well, Miss Crawford, you are welcome. Now rest while I make you some food. In the kitchen, Austin prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and preserved fruit, along with fresh water from the well. His mind churned with possibilities about who Caroline Crawford was and what had driven her to his gate. The rope burns on her wrists suggested she had been held captive, and the expensive quality of her ruined dress indicated she came from money. None of it added up to anything good. When he returned to the bedroom, she was sitting up, though the effort clearly cost her. He set the tray on the bedside table and helped her adjust the pillows behind her back. Take your time, he said as she reached for the water with trembling hands. She drank deeply, then ate slowly, as if she had not had food in days. He sat back in his chair and waited patiently, knowing she would talk when she was ready. Finally, after she had eaten half the bread and most of the cheese, she set down the plate and looked at him directly. I ran away from my husband, she said simply. Austin felt his stomach tighten. I see. He is a cruel man. I should have known before I married him, but I was young and foolish, and my parents were eager for the connection. The Crawfords of Boston marrying the Whitfields of New York. It was supposed to be a perfect match. Her voice was bitter now, laced with pain. Charles Whitfield is a monster. He beat me, controlled every aspect of my life, and when I tried to leave the first time, he locked me in our bedroom for 3 weeks. How did you get away? Austin asked quietly. We came west on business. He had investments in the mining operations around Butt. I overheard him telling his business partner that once his dealings were done, he was going to take me back to New York and make sure I never saw daylight again. She shuddered at the memory. That night, while he was drunk, I tied the bedsheets together and climbed out the hotel window. I stole a horse and rode as far as I could before it threw me. Then I walked. For 2 days, I think, maybe 3, I lost track of time. Austin felt rage building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. And the rope burns. Before we left New York, he tied me up in the carriage so I could not escape during the journey. The marks are still fresh. Does he know where you are? No. At least, I do not think so. I stayed off the main roads, traveled at night when I could, but he will be looking for me. Charles does not like to lose his possessions, and that is all I ever was to him. A possession. Austin leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Miss Crawford, I want you to understand something. As long as you are on my land, you are under my protection. Your husband or anyone else will have to go through me to get to you. She searched his face again, and this time tears spilled down her cheeks. Why? Why would you do this for a stranger? Because it is the right thing to do, and because no woman deserves to be treated the way you have been. He stood up and moved toward the door. You need to rest now. We can figure out the rest later. Mr. James, she called as he reached the doorway. Yes, thank you, truly. He nodded and left the room, closing the door gently behind him. His mind was already working through the logistics of the situation. If Charles Whitfield was as wealthy and connected as Caroline suggested, he would have resources to track her down. The question was how much time they had before he came looking. Over the next few days, Caroline slowly regained her strength. Austin moved his things to the spare room, insisting she keep the main bedroom until she was fully recovered. He cooked simple meals, tended to her wounds, and gave her space to heal both physically and emotionally. She was quiet at first, spending most of her time resting or staring out the window at the rolling Montana landscape. But gradually, she began to emerge from her shell, asking questions about the ranch, about his life, about White River. "How long have you been here?" she asked one evening as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. 15 years. I came west after my parents died, looking for a fresh start. Worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved every penny and finally bought this land. It was nothing but scrub and rocks back then, but I built it up piece by piece. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "Peaceful. It can be. It is also hard work. The winters are brutal and the summers are not much better, but it is mine and that means something." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I have never had anything that was truly mine. Everything I had came from my father or my husband. Even my clothes, my jewelry, everything was chosen for me, controlled by them. That must have been difficult. It was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning slowly, day by day, and nobody could see it because I was smiling and playing the perfect wife." She turned to look at him, her green eyes reflecting the dying light. "You saved my life, Austin, not just from dying in the desert, but from a life that was killing me slowly." He felt something shift in his chest at her words, at the way she said his name. "You saved yourself, Caroline. You were the one who had the courage to run. But I would not have made it without you." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The air between them felt charged with something Austin could not quite name, something that both excited and terrified him. Caroline broke the silence first, looking away quickly. "I should go inside. It is getting cold." "Of course." He stood and offered his hand to help her up. She took it, and the warmth of her skin against his sent a jolt through his entire body. That night, Austin lay awake in the spare room, staring at the ceiling. He was no stranger to attraction, had even been in love once when he was younger, but this felt different. Caroline was vulnerable, dependent on him for protection and shelter. Any feelings he might be developing were inappropriate at best, predatory at worst. But he could not deny the way his heart raced when she smiled, or the protective instinct that surged through him whenever he thought about her husband coming after her. It was more than just doing the right thing. It was personal now, in a way that both thrilled and terrified him. The next morning, Caroline surprised him by appearing in the kitchen already dressed, her hair pulled back in a simple braid. "I want to help," she announced. "I cannot just sit around being useless while you do all the work." Austin looked up from the eggs he was frying. "You are still recovering." "I am much better now, thanks to your care. Please let me do something. I am going insane with boredom." He considered this, then nodded. "All right, but nothing too strenuous. You can start by feeding the chickens and collecting eggs. Think you can handle that?" "I can certainly try." She proved to be a quick learner, despite her obvious lack of experience with ranch work. She approached each task with determination, even when she made mistakes. Austin found himself watching her more than he should, admiring the way she threw herself into the work, the way she laughed when the chickens chased her, the way the Montana sun brought color back to her pale cheeks. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after she had arrived, they were working together to repair a section of fence when she suddenly stopped and looked at him. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Have you ever been married?" The question caught him off guard. "No." "I was engaged once, back in Ohio before I came west. But she decided she did not want to be a rancher's wife. She married a banker instead." "Do you regret coming here?" "Not for a second. If she could not handle the life I wanted, then we were not right for each other." He hammered in another nail before adding, "What about you? Do you regret marrying Whitfield?" "Every single day. But I was raised to be obedient, to do what my parents thought was best. I did not know I had a choice until it was too late." She paused, then said quietly, Or maybe I did know, but I was too afraid to choose differently. You chose to run. That took more courage than most people have." She smiled at him, and his heart did that strange flip again. "You are very kind to me, Austin. I am just treating you the way any decent person should." "Maybe. But in my experience, decent people are rarer than you think." They worked in comfortable silence after that, but Austin could feel something building between them, something that could not be ignored much longer. That evening, as they sat on the porch again watching the stars come out, Caroline spoke suddenly. "What if he finds me?" Austin had been expecting this question. "Then we will deal with it. He will have the law on his side. I am his legal wife. He has every right to take me back." "I do not give a damn what the law says. You are not a piece of property, and I will not let him take you anywhere you do not want to go." She turned to look at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You would fight for me, risk everything you have built here?" "Yes." "Why?" He met her gaze steadily. "Because it is the right thing to do, and because—" He hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Because I care about you, Caroline, more than I probably should given the circumstances." She drew in a sharp breath. "Austin, I know it is not appropriate. I know you are vulnerable and dependent on me right now. I am not trying to take advantage of that. But you asked why I would fight for you, and I wanted you to know the truth." For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "What if I told you that I care about you too? That over these past weeks, you have shown me what a real man should be? What if I said that, when I think about the future, the only place I want to be is right here?" His heart pounded in his chest. "I would say that we should take things slowly. You have been through a trauma and you need time to heal. I have been healing, thanks to you, both my body and my soul." She squeezed his hand. "I know it has only been a few weeks, but I have never felt safer or more valued than I do when I am with you. Is that wrong?" "No," he said softly. "It is not wrong." They sat together holding hands, neither speaking, just being present with each other under the vast Montana sky. Austin knew that this was a turning point, that whatever happened next would change both their lives forever. The peaceful moment was shattered 3 days later when a group of riders appeared on the horizon, heading straight for the ranch. Austin saw them first and immediately called for Caroline to get inside the house. "Is it him?" she asked, her voice tight with fear. "I do not know, but I am not taking any chances. Get inside and stay away from the windows." She obeyed without argument, and he watched her disappear into the house before turning his attention back to the approaching riders. There were 4 of them, well-dressed men on expensive horses. His hand instinctively went to the rifle he kept by the door. The riders pulled up at the gate, and the man in front dismounted. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with slicked back hair and cold blue eyes. Everything about him screamed wealth and arrogance. "Are you Austin James?" The man called out. "I am. What is your business here?" "My name is Charles Whitfield. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Austin felt rage surge through him, but he kept his voice level. "I do not know what you are talking about. Do not play games with me, Cowboy. My wife ran away 3 weeks ago, and I have tracked her here. I want her returned to me immediately. Even if I knew where your wife was, which I am not saying I do, what makes you think I would hand a woman over to a man who beats her?" Charles's face darkened. "What happens between a man and his wife is no concern of yours. She is my legal property, and you are harboring a fugitive. I can have the sheriff here within the hour." "Then go get him. But I am telling you right now, no woman is leaving my property unless she wants to." One of the other riders, a thin man with a sharp face, spoke up. "This is pointless, Charles. Let me and the boys go in there and drag her out." Austin raised his rifle smoothly, pointing it at the speaker. "You are welcome to try, but I guarantee some of you will not be leaving here alive." Charles held up a hand, stopping his companion. He studied Austin with calculating eyes. "You are willing to die for a woman you barely know. She must be very convincing. Did she tell you about her mental problems, her hysterics, her lies?" "She told me you are a monster who beats women." "That is all I need to know." "I see she has gotten to you. Caroline always was good at playing the victim." He took a step forward, his voice becoming almost reasonable. "Look, I understand. She is beautiful, and I am sure she told you a very compelling story, but she is sick in her mind. She needs medical treatment, which I am prepared to provide. If you hand her over now, I will forget this whole incident. You can go back to your simple life, and nobody gets hurt." The answer is no. Charles's facade of reasonableness dropped, and his face twisted with anger. "You are making a very big mistake, Cowboy. I have money, influence, and the law on my side. I will bury you. You can try." For a tense moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Charles remounted his horse. "This is not over. I will be back with the sheriff, and when I am, you will hang for kidnapping. I look forward to it." The riders turned and galloped away, kicking up clouds of dust. Austin watched until they disappeared from view, then lowered his rifle and went inside. He found Caroline sitting on the floor of the bedroom, her back against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "He found me," she whispered. "I knew he would, but I let myself hope." Austin knelt beside her and pulled her into his arms. "It is going to be all right. I will not let him take you. You heard what he said. He has the law on his side. In the eyes of society, I am his property. No court will side with me over him. Then we will figure something else out." She pulled back to look at him. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I meant what I told him. You are not leaving here unless you want to. If we have to run, we will run. If we have to fight, we will fight. You would give up everything for me. Your ranch, your life here. This ranch is just land and buildings. You are a living, breathing person who deserves to be free and happy. Yes, I would give it up for you." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they were mixed with something else. Hope, maybe, or love. "How did I get so lucky to find you? I think I am the lucky one." She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then with more confidence. Austin responded carefully, mindful of her trauma, letting her set the pace. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I love you," she whispered. "I know it is too soon, and it is probably crazy, but I love you, Austin James." "I love you too," he said, and realized he had never meant anything more in his entire life. They spent the rest of the day preparing for Charles's return. Austin checked his ammunition, made sure all the doors and windows could be secured, and moved supplies into the house in case they needed to hold out for a while. Caroline helped with quiet determination, and he could see the fear in her eyes but also a newfound strength. That night, they slept in the same bed, holding each other close. Nothing more than that, just the comfort of being together, of knowing they were not alone in what was coming. The sheriff arrived the next morning, accompanied by Charles and his men, plus 2 deputies. Austin had expected this, but his stomach still sank at the sight of the law badge. Sheriff Tom Morrison was a weathered man in his 50s, someone Austin had met a few times in town. He had always seemed fair, but there was no telling how he would handle this situation. "Austin," the sheriff called out as he dismounted, "I need to talk to you." Austin stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand but pointed at the ground. "Sheriff Morrison, Mr. Whitfield here says you are harboring his wife against her will, says you threatened him with violence yesterday." "That true?" "I told him that no woman would be leaving my property unless she wanted to. And yes, I made it clear I would defend my land against anyone who tried to force their way onto it." Morrison sighed. "You know I cannot just ignore this, Austin. If Caroline Whitfield is here, she needs to come out and speak to me. And if I do, What happens? Caroline's voice rang out from the doorway. She stepped past Austin, her chin raised defiantly despite the trembling in her hands. What happens when I tell you that I ran away from a man who beat me, who locked me up, who treated me like an animal? Charles started to speak, but Morrison held up a hand to silence him. Madam, those are serious accusations. You have proof. She pushed up her sleeves, revealing the fading bruises and the rope burns on her wrists. Is this proof enough? Or perhaps you would like to see the scars on my back from where he whipped me with his belt? Several of the men shifted uncomfortably, and even Morrison looked disturbed. But Charles just smiled coldly. As I told the sheriff, my wife suffers from mental instability. She inflicted many of those wounds on herself, and the others were the result of my attempts to restrain her for her own safety. That is a lie. Caroline's voice shook with emotion. I have never harmed myself. Every mark on my body came from him. Morrison rubbed his face tiredly. Look, this is a complicated situation. Normally, domestic disputes between husband and wife are not a matter for the law. But given the severity of the accusations on both sides, I think we need to take this before a judge. Fine, Austin said. We will come to town and present our case. That is not how this works, Charles interjected. She is my wife. She comes with me now, and then we will deal with the legal proceedings. Absolutely not, Austin said flatly. If you think I am handing her over to you, you are insane. Morrison looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Austin, legally, Mr. Whitfield has a point. Until a judge rules otherwise, Caroline is still his wife and under his authority. I am not going with him, Caroline said, her voice strong despite her fear. I would rather die. See, Charles said triumphantly. This is exactly the kind of hysteria I have been dealing with. She is clearly not in her right mind. Austin stepped forward, positioning himself between Caroline and the other men. Sheriff, I am asking you, as someone I have always respected, to do the right thing here. Look at her. Look at those wounds. Does she look like someone who harmed herself? Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying Caroline's face, her injuries, the way she stood close to Austin as if he were her only protection. Finally, he spoke. Mr. Whitfield, I cannot in good conscience force this woman to go with you today, not until we have had a proper hearing. In the meantime, she will remain here in Mr. James's custody until we can get a judge out here from Helena. This is outrageous, Charles sputtered. You are taking the word of a hysterical woman and a nobody cowboy over a respected businessman. I am doing what I think is right, Morrison said firmly. Now, you can either accept my decision or I can arrest you for disturbing the peace. Your choice. Charles looked like he wanted to argue further, but one of his companions leaned in and whispered something in his ear. After a moment, he nodded curtly. Fine, but I want that hearing scheduled as soon as possible, and I will be filing formal complaints about both your conduct, Sheriff, and Mr. James's interference. You do what you need to do, Morrison said, but for now this matter is settled. The group rode away, Charles shooting murderous looks back at the ranch. When they were gone, Morrison turned to Austin and Caroline. I bought you some time, but I want you to understand something. The law is not on your side here. When that judge arrives, he is most likely going to rule in Whitfield's favor. Marriage is a sacred bond, and judges do not like to interfere. What if we were not married anymore? Caroline asked suddenly. Morrison looked confused. Madam, what if I divorced him? Would that change things? Divorce is rare and difficult, especially for women to obtain. You would need grounds, and even with those injuries, it is not guaranteed. Plus, it takes time, sometimes years. Caroline's shoulders slumped, but Austin put his arm around her. Thank you for what you did today, Sheriff. We will figure out the rest. After Morrison left, Austin and Caroline sat together in the living room, trying to process what had happened. "I cannot divorce him in time," Caroline said quietly. "And even if I could, he would never let it happen. He has too much pride." "Then we will find another way." "What other way?" "You heard the sheriff. The law is on Charles's side." Austin was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then an idea began to form. What if you were not his wife anymore? Not through divorce, but through another marriage? She looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" "If you married me, then legally you would be my wife, not his. Charles could claim whatever he wanted, but if we presented a marriage certificate that superseded his, he would have no claim. But I am already married. I cannot marry someone else." "Not in the eyes of the law, no. But what if we went somewhere the law could not reach? The Crow Reservation is about 30 miles from here. Their chief, a man named Red Wing, is someone I have done business with. Their marriages are recognized by their own people, even if the United States government does not always acknowledge them." Caroline stared at him. "You are suggesting we get married on the reservation." "I am suggesting we do whatever it takes to keep you safe." "If that means a Crow wedding ceremony, then yes. We could also travel to Canada, get married there, and come back. Either way, we create a paper trail that muddles Charles's claim long enough for us to figure out a more permanent solution. But that could take months, maybe years. You would be tied to me all that time, unable to marry someone else, unable to live your life." He took her hands in his. "Caroline, I already told you I love you. I meant it. If marrying you is what it takes to keep you safe, then I cannot think of anything I would rather do. And honestly, even if Charles was not a factor, I would still want to marry you. You are the bravest, strongest, most amazing woman I have ever met." Tears filled her eyes again. "Are you proposing to me?" "I guess I am. It is not the most romantic proposal, and I do not have a ring, but yes." "Caroline Crawford, will you marry me?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." They kissed again, and this time there was joy mixed with the fear and uncertainty. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The next morning, they prepared for the journey to the Crow Reservation. Austin packed supplies and saddled 2 horses while Caroline gathered what few possessions she had. As they were about to leave, she stopped him. "Wait. If we are going to do this, I want to do it right. I want to marry you not just to escape Charles, but because I love you and want to spend my life with you. That is all I want too. Then let us make a promise right here before we go. No matter what happens, we are in this together. No secrets, no running away from problems. We face everything as partners." Austin smiled and took her hand. "I promise. We are partners from this moment on." They rode out as the sun climbed higher in the sky, heading northwest toward the Crow Reservation. The journey would take most of the day, but Austin knew the way well. He had traded with Red Wing's people for years, selling them cattle and horses in exchange for leather goods and other items. As they rode, they talked about everything and nothing. Caroline told him more about her life in Boston, about her childhood dreams of becoming a teacher, about the books she loved to read. Austin shared stories about building the ranch, about the hard winters and the good years, about his hopes for the future. "I want children someday," Caroline said as they stopped to water the horses. "Is that something you want? I always thought I would have a family, but I never met the right woman, until now." He looked at her seriously. "But I want you to be sure, Caroline. This is happening fast, and I do not want you to feel pressured. I have never been more sure of anything. When I collapsed at your gate 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was over, but you showed me that it was just beginning. I do not need more time to know that you are the man I want to be with." They reached the reservation as the sun began to set. The Crow people lived in a mix of traditional lodges and more permanent structures, spread out across a beautiful valley with a river running through it. Children played near the water, and smoke rose from cooking fires. A group of men approached as Austin and Caroline dismounted. One of them, a tall man with long gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Austin James, it has been many months since you visited us. Red Wing, it is good to see you." Austin gestured to Caroline. "This is Caroline Crawford. We need your help." Red Wing's eyes moved to Caroline, taking in her nervous posture and the fading bruises on her arms. "Come, we will talk." They followed him to a larger lodge where Red Wing's wife, a woman named Morning Star, greeted them warmly. They sat around a fire and Austin explained the situation, holding nothing back. Red Wing listened without interruption, his face grave. When Austin finished, Red Wing was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in his own language to Morning Star, who nodded and left the lodge. He turned back to Austin and Caroline. "You ask for our protection and our blessing. This is no small thing. The white man's law does not always respect our ways, and by helping you, we may bring trouble to our people." "I understand," Austin said, "and I would not ask if there was any other way. But I will not let her be taken back to a man who will hurt her." Red Wing studied them both carefully. "You love this woman with everything I am. And you," he turned to Caroline, "you love this man, or are you just running from your pain?" Caroline met his gaze steadily. "I love him. He saved my life, but more than that, he gave me hope again. He treats me like I have value, like my thoughts and feelings matter. I want to be his wife, not just to escape my old life, but to build a new one with him." Morning Star returned, carrying a bundle of sage and other herbs. She spoke to Red Wing in their language, and he nodded. "My wife says she sees the truth in your hearts. The spirits have brought you together for a reason." He stood up. "We will perform the ceremony tonight, but understand this. In our tradition, marriage is sacred. It is not just a legal bond, but a joining of souls. If you are not ready for that commitment, tell me now." "We are ready," Austin and Caroline said together. The ceremony took place under the stars, with the entire community gathered to witness. Morning Star painted symbols on their faces with red clay, while Red Wing chanted blessings in the Crow language. They exchanged simple bands woven from grass, a temporary symbol of their union, until Austin could get proper rings made in town. "The Creator has joined you as one," Red Wing said in English, so that Austin and Caroline could understand. "What was two is now one spirit, one purpose. Walk together in harmony, support each other through all trials, and your love will grow stronger with each passing season." Austin and Caroline kissed, and the gathered people cheered. It was not the wedding either of them had imagined, but it was perfect in its sincerity and simplicity. They stayed with the Crow for 2 days, and Red Wing gave them a document, written in both English and Crow, declaring their marriage. It was not a legal document in the eyes of the United States government, but it was something, a record of their union that predated any challenges Charles might bring. On the morning of the 3rd day, Austin and Caroline prepared to return to the ranch. Morning Star gave Caroline a beautiful beaded necklace as a wedding gift, and Red Wing pulled Austin aside. "The man who hunts your wife will not give up easily. Men like him see the world as things to possess and control. Be vigilant, my friend." "I will, and thank you for everything. You have always been a friend to our people. We do not forget such things." The ride back to the ranch was different from the journey out. Before, they had been 2 people running from danger. Now they were husband and wife, bound together by love and commitment. They talked about their future, about the life they would build together. "I want to expand the ranch," Austin said as they rode. "Maybe get more cattle, build a bigger barn, and we will need to add onto the house if we are going to have children." How many children do you want?" Caroline asked with a smile. "I do not know. 3, 4, however many we are blessed with. I like that. A house full of children growing up with space to run and fresh air to breathe. It sounds perfect." When they arrived back at the ranch, everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. Austin felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as they approached the house. "Wait here," he told Caroline, dismounting and pulling his rifle from its holster. But before he could investigate, Charles and his men emerged from behind the barn. They were armed, and they looked furious. "Well, well," Charles said, his voice dripping with malice. "The fugitives return. Did you really think you could hide from me by running to the savages?" Austin kept his rifle pointed at the ground but ready to raise it. "This is private property, Whitfield. You are trespassing." "I do not care about your property rights. I want my wife, and I want her now." Caroline rode up beside Austin, sitting tall in her saddle. "I am not your wife anymore, Charles. I married Austin. We have a certificate and witnesses." Charles laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think a fake marriage to an Indian tribe means anything? You are still legally bound to me, and I am taking you back to New York whether you like it or not." "Over my dead body," Austin said quietly. "That can be arranged." Charles nodded to his men, who raised their weapons. Time seemed to slow down. Austin knew they were outnumbered and outgunned. He could try to fight, but Caroline would likely be caught in the crossfire. He needed to think of something fast. Then, from behind Charles and his men, Sheriff Morrison's voice rang out. "Drop your weapons, all of you." Everyone turned to see Morrison and his 2 deputies, all armed with rifles, positioned near the barn. "This is none of your concern, Sheriff," Charles said, though he looked less confident now. "When armed men trespass on private property and make threats, it becomes my concern. Now, I am going to ask one more time. Drop your weapons." After a tense moment, Charles's men slowly lowered their guns. Charles looked like he wanted to argue, but the odds were no longer in his favor. Morrison walked forward, his rifle still trained on the group. "Mr. Whitfield, you and your men are going to leave White River immediately, and if I see you anywhere near this ranch again, I will arrest you for trespassing and attempted assault. You cannot do this. The law is on my side. Maybe it is, maybe it is not. But right now, I am the law in White River, and I am telling you to leave. Whatever legal claims you think you have can be handled through proper channels, not at gunpoint." For a moment, Austin thought Charles might actually try to fight. But then the man's shoulders slumped and he turned to his men. "Let us go. This is not over," he said, looking directly at Caroline. "I will see you in court, and when I win, you will wish you had come with me now." They mounted their horses and rode off, Charles shooting one last venomous look at Austin before disappearing down the road. Morrison approached Austin and Caroline, lowering his rifle. "That was close. I was on my way to warn you that Whitfield was asking around town about the Crow Reservation. Figured he might try something stupid." "Thank you, Sheriff. You saved our lives." Morrison looked at Caroline. "Did you really marry him?" She nodded, reaching into her saddlebag and pulling out the document Red Wing had given them. "We did. On the Crow Reservation, with Red Wing performing the ceremony." The sheriff examined the document, then shook his head with something between amusement and respect. "Well, that is certainly creative. I do not know if it will hold up in court, but it is something." "What happens now?" Austin asked. "Now, you 2 lay low and wait. Whitfield will likely try to bring a judge in to rule on this, but that could take weeks or even months. In the meantime, you are legally married as far as I am concerned, even if the government might see it differently." After Morrison left, Austin and Caroline went into the house and collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted. "Is it always going to be like this?" Caroline asked quietly. Always looking over our shoulders, waiting for him to come back. No, Austin said firmly. We will find a way to end this, I promise you. She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her. I am tired, Austin. Tired of running, tired of fighting. I just want to be happy. Then let us be happy. Right now, in this moment, we are together and we are safe. That has to be enough. They sat together in the quiet house, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the fire in the hearth. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of bliss and tension. Austin and Caroline settled into married life, working the ranch together during the day and falling more deeply in love at night. Caroline proved to be a quick learner, taking on more responsibilities around the ranch and even teaching herself to ride better. But always in the back of their minds was the knowledge that Charles had not given up. They heard rumors in town that he was working with lawyers in Helena, trying to build a case to have their marriage annulled, and Caroline returned to him. One evening, about 6 weeks after the confrontation at the ranch, Caroline made an announcement over dinner. I think I am pregnant. Austin nearly dropped his fork. What? I have missed my monthly courses and I have been feeling sick in the mornings. I think we are going to have a baby. Joy flooded through him, followed immediately by fear. A baby would complicate everything. Are you sure? Not completely, but fairly certain. Mrs. Henderson at the general store says there is a doctor who comes through White River once a month. I thought I would see him when he is next here. Austin stood up and pulled her into his arms, all his fears momentarily forgotten in the face of this incredible news. A baby. We are going to have a baby. She laughed and held him tight. Are you happy? Happy, Caroline. I am terrified and thrilled and amazed all at once. You have given me everything I never knew I wanted. They spent the evening talking about names and whether it would be a boy or girl, about where they would put the nursery and what color to paint it. For a few hours, they forgot about Charles and legal battles and focused only on the future they were building. But reality came crashing back 2 days later when Sheriff Morrison arrived with grim news. A judge is coming from Helena next week. Charles Whitfield has filed a petition to have your marriage annulled and to force Caroline to return to him. You are going to need to present your case. Austin and Caroline sat in the living room with Morrison, trying to process this information. What are our chances? Austin asked. Morrison sighed. Honestly, not great. Your marriage, while real to the Crow people, is not recognized by the United States government, and legally, Caroline is still married to Whitfield. The best you can hope for is that the judge is sympathetic and gives you time to pursue a divorce or annulment from Whitfield first. That could take years, Caroline said, and in the meantime, he could force me to return to him. It is possible, yes. Caroline's hand went instinctively to her stomach, though she was not showing yet. Austin saw the gesture and made a decision. What if Caroline was not here when the judge arrived? Morrison's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that maybe Caroline needs to visit some friends up in Canada for a while, just until we figure out a more permanent solution. Austin, if you help her flee, you could be arrested for aiding a fugitive. Then arrest me. But I will not let her be forced back to a man who will hurt her and potentially our unborn child. Morrison stared at him. She is pregnant, Caroline nodded. We think so. It is early still, but yes. The sheriff rubbed his face tiredly. Lord, this just gets more complicated. Look, I did not hear anything about plans to go to Canada, understand? And if someone were to make that trip, they would want to leave soon before the judge arrives. Thank you, Sheriff, Austin said quietly. After Morrison left, Austin and Caroline began preparing for the journey. They would travel light, taking only what they could carry on horseback. Austin would escort her to a small town just across the Canadian border called Lethbridge, where they had contacts through the ranching community. "What about the ranch?" Caroline asked as they packed. "You cannot just abandon it. I will come back once you are settled and safe. Then I will deal with whatever legal mess Charles creates, but you and our baby come first." They left before dawn the next morning, riding north under a sky full of stars. It was late September now, and the air was cold, hinting at the harsh winter to come. They pushed hard, covering as much ground as possible before stopping to rest. On the third day of travel, as they approached the border, disaster struck. Caroline's horse stepped in a hole and went down hard, throwing her from the saddle. Austin was off his own horse in seconds, running to her side. "Caroline, are you all right?" She was conscious but clearly hurt, holding her side and gasping in pain. "The baby," she whispered. "Austin, what about the baby?" He carefully checked her over, looking for signs of serious injury. She had hit her head and had scraped her arms, but nothing seemed broken. The question was whether the fall had harmed the pregnancy. "We need to get you to a doctor," he said, helping her sit up slowly. "We cannot go back. Charles's people might be looking for us. There is a small settlement about 5 miles ahead. I know a rancher there, a man named Thomas Calloway. His wife might be able to help." Leaving Caroline's injured horse behind, they rode together on Austin's mount, moving as quickly as they dared given Caroline's injuries. She clung to him, her face pale with pain and fear. They reached the Calloway ranch as the sun was setting. Thomas and his wife Mary were surprised to see them but welcomed them immediately. Mary took one look at Caroline and ushered her inside, while Thomas helped Austin with the horses. "What happened?" Thomas asked. Austin explained the situation as briefly as possible. Thomas, a man in his 60s with a weathered face and kind eyes, listened without judgment. "Mary lost a baby years ago after a fall. She will take good care of your wife. Come on inside." In the house, Mary had settled Caroline on a bed and was examining her carefully. Austin stood in the doorway, feeling helpless. "The bleeding has not started, which is a good sign," Mary said after a while. "But she needs to rest for at least a few days, maybe longer. No riding, no heavy work. If this baby is going to survive, Caroline needs to be still." Relief washed through Austin, followed by worry. "We cannot stay long. There are people looking for her." "Then you are in a difficult position," Mary said bluntly. "Because if she rides now, she will almost certainly lose the baby. Maybe her life too if the bleeding starts and we cannot stop it." Austin moved to Caroline's side and took her hand. "We will stay. Your health and the baby's health are more important than anything else." She squeezed his hand, tears sliding down her cheeks. I am sorry for all of this." "Do not apologize. None of this is your fault." They stayed at the Calloway Ranch for 2 weeks. Caroline remained in bed for the first week, gradually regaining her strength. Mary proved to be an excellent nurse, bringing herbal teas and nutritious meals, checking on Caroline regularly. During this time, Austin helped Thomas with work around the ranch, grateful for the distraction. In the evenings, he would sit with Caroline, reading to her from books Mary provided, talking about their future. "You think we will ever be free of him?" Caroline asked one night. "Yes. I do not know how yet, but I believe it. We did not come this far to give up now." On the 15th day, Mary declared that Caroline was recovered enough to travel, though she should take it slowly. Austin thanked the Calloways profusely, offering to pay them for their hospitality, but they refused. "You would do the same for us," Thomas said simply. "Now go, get your wife somewhere safe." They continued their journey to Canada, crossing the border without incident. Lethbridge proved to be a small but growing town with a mix of ranchers, farmers, and merchants. Austin contacted a man he knew named Robert Fraser, who ran a horse breeding operation outside of town. Robert, a Scot who had immigrated to Canada 20 years earlier, listened to their story and offered them shelter without hesitation. "The Mounties do not care about American marriage disputes," he said in his thick accent. "You will be safe here, lass, while your man sorts things out." Austin stayed with Caroline for 3 more days, making sure she was comfortable and safe. But eventually, he knew he had to return to Montana to face whatever consequences awaited him. "I do not want you to go," Caroline said the night before he was to leave. "I do not want to leave, but if we are ever going to have a real life together, I need to deal with this head-on. Running will only work for so long. What if Charles has you arrested? What if you cannot come back? Then you will stay here, have our baby, and build a good life. But I believe I will be back. I have faith that truth and justice will win out eventually." She clung to him that night, and they made love gently, carefully, both knowing it might be a long time before they saw each other again. The next morning, Austin rode south, his heart heavy but his resolve firm. He would face whatever waited for him in White River, and he would find a way to free Caroline from Charles's legal clutches once and for all. When he arrived back at his ranch, he found Sheriff Morrison waiting for him on the porch. "I figured you would come back eventually," Morrison said. "Where is Caroline?" "Somewhere safe. That is all you need to know," Morrison sighed. "Look, Austin, I like you, and I believe Caroline's story about what Whitfield did to her, but you are in serious trouble. The judge issued a warrant for your arrest for aiding a fugitive. Whitfield is demanding I bring you in." "Then bring me in. I am not going to run. Are you sure? Once you are in custody, you might not get out for a long time." "I am sure. I want my day in court. Let Charles bring his lawyers and his money. I will tell the truth, and we will see what happens." Morrison stood up and pulled out handcuffs. "Austin James, I am arresting you for aiding a fugitive and contempt of court. You have the right to." Austin barely heard the rest. He let Morrison cuff him and lead him to the wagon, taking one last look at his ranch as they drove toward town. No matter what happened next, he knew he had done the right thing. The jail in White River was small and relatively comfortable, as such places went. Austin had a cell to himself, with a cot, a bucket, and a small window that looked out onto the main street. Morrison brought him meals and allowed him visitors. Though Austin did not have many, Charles came to see him once, a smug smile on his face. "Where is she?" Charles demanded. "Safe from you. That is all that matters. You stupid cowboy. Do you have any idea what you have done? I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. Then do it. But you will never get your hands on Caroline again." Charles's smile faltered. "She is my wife. She belongs to me. She is a human being, not a possession, and she is a better person than you will ever be." Charles lunged at the bars, but Morrison was there in a second, pulling him back. "That is enough. Mr. Whitfield, you need to leave now." After Charles was gone, Morrison sat down outside Austin's cell. "You realize he is going to do everything in his power to destroy you, right? Let him try. You really love her that much, more than I can put into words. She is my wife, the mother of my child. I would die for her if it came to that." Morrison shook his head in wonder. "I have been a lawman for 30 years, and I have never seen anything like this. A man willing to give up everything for a woman he has known for just a few months. When you know, you know. Have you ever been in love, Sheriff?" "Once, a long time ago. She died of fever before we could get married." Morrison stood up. "Get some rest, Austin. Your trial is in 3 days." The trial was held in the largest building in White River, the church that doubled as a courthouse when needed. Judge Henry Martinez presided, a stern man in his 60s with a reputation for fairness, but also for following the letter of the law. Austin stood before him, without a lawyer because he could not afford one, and listened as Charles's attorney laid out the case. It was simple and damning. Austin had interfered in a legal marriage, had helped Caroline flee from her husband, and had violated a court order by refusing to produce her. When it was Austin's turn to speak, he stood tall and told his story honestly. He described finding Caroline collapsed at his gate, the bruises and wounds on her body, her fear and desperation. He told about Charles's visit, the threats, the attempts to take her by force. "I do not deny that I helped her get away from Charles Whitfield," Austin said. "But I do not apologize for it either. That man beat his wife, locked her up, treated her like an animal. I could not stand by and watch him take her back to that life. If that makes me a criminal, then so be it." The courtroom was silent when he finished. Judge Martinez studied him for a long moment, then turned to Charles. "Mr. Whitfield, I have reviewed the evidence, including photographs of your wife's injuries. Do you deny causing those injuries?" "I deny any wrongdoing." "My wife is mentally unstable and prone to self-harm. I was attempting to protect her from herself." "I see. And the testimony from multiple witnesses that they heard screams and sounds of violence from your hotel room in Butt." Charles's lawyer stood up quickly. "Hearsay, Your Honor. None of those witnesses actually saw what was happening. Perhaps, but combined with the physical evidence, it paints a concerning picture." Martinez turned back to Austin. "Mr. James, while I sympathize with your position, you did violate a court order. However, given the extenuating circumstances, I am going to impose a sentence of time served and a fine of $100. Austin felt relief wash through him. It was more than he could easily afford, but it meant he would not be imprisoned. But Martinez was not done. He turned to Charles. "As for you, Mr. Whitfield, I am troubled by what I have heard in this courtroom. While I cannot dissolve your marriage without your wife's presence, I am going to order an investigation into your conduct. If it is determined that you did indeed abuse your wife, you may face criminal charges." Charles's face turned red. "This is outrageous. I am the victim here. And if that is true, the investigation will show it, but I will not simply hand a woman back to a man who may have abused her without proper inquiry. This court is adjourned." Austin paid his fine with money borrowed from Sheriff Morrison and walked out of the courthouse a free man. But he knew this was not over. Charles would not give up easily, and Caroline was still legally married to him. He made arrangements for a neighbor to watch his ranch, then prepared to return to Canada. But before he could leave, something happened that changed everything. Charles Whitfield was found dead in his hotel room, apparently from a heart attack. The doctor said it appeared natural, likely brought on by stress and excessive drinking. An autopsy was performed, and it confirmed the findings. Charles Whitfield was dead at the age of 38, leaving Caroline a widow. When the news reached Austin, he felt strange. Not joy, exactly, because he did not wish death on anyone. But relief, profound and overwhelming, because it meant Caroline was finally free. He rode to Canada as fast as his horse could carry him, arriving at the Fraser Ranch 3 days later. Caroline was in the garden, picking vegetables, her belly now showing a small but definite bump. When she saw him, she dropped the basket and ran to him. "Austin, you are back. I was so worried. I heard about the trial but not the outcome." He swept her into his arms, holding her tight. "It is over, Caroline. Charles is dead. You are free." She pulled back to look at him, confusion and hope warring on her face. "Dead? How?" He told her everything, watching her process the information. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I should feel something," she said finally. "Grief, maybe, or guilt, but all I feel is relieved. Does that make me a terrible person?" "No, it makes you human. He hurt you, terrified you, tried to destroy you. You do not owe him grief. What happens now? Now we go home. We get properly married legally in a church if you want. We have our baby. We live the life we were meant to have." She smiled, truly smiled for the first time since the trial. Home. I like the sound of that. They stayed in Canada for another month, waiting for the legal paperwork to be processed confirming Charles's death and Caroline's new status as a widow. During that time, they talked about everything, planning their future in detail. "I want to expand the ranch," Austin said one evening as they sat by the fireplace in the Frasers' guest house. "Maybe buy the land adjacent to ours. We could run more cattle, maybe even start breeding horses." "That sounds wonderful, and I want to start a school in White River. So many families out here have children who need education, but no one to teach them. You would make an excellent teacher." "I hope so. It is something I have wanted to do since I was young." They talked about the baby too, debating names and arguing good-naturedly about whether it would be a boy or a girl. "I think it is a boy," Caroline said, her hand on her growing belly. "He kicks like a mule. A boy. Our son." Austin put his hand over hers, feeling the movement. "What should we name him?" "What was your father's name?" "William. But we called him Bill. William James. That is a good, strong name." In December, they returned to Montana as the first snow began to fall. White River welcomed them back with surprising warmth. News of Charles's death had spread, and with it, sympathy for what Caroline had endured. Several women from town visited the ranch, bringing food and supplies, offering friendship. In January, Austin and Caroline were married again, this time in the White River Church with Sheriff Morrison as a witness and half the town in attendance. Caroline wore a simple dress that accommodated her growing belly, and Austin wore his best suit. Pastor John Mitchell performed the ceremony, speaking about love, commitment, and second chances. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder," Mitchell said as they exchanged real rings, simple gold bands that Austin had ordered from a jeweler in Helena. "You are legally, officially, completely mine now," Austin whispered as they kissed. "And you are mine," Caroline whispered back. Their son was born in March of 1876 during a late spring snowstorm. The doctor from Helena happened to be in town, fortunately, and attended the birth along with Mary Calloway, who had come to stay with them for the final weeks of the pregnancy. Labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Austin paced the living room listening to Caroline's cries, feeling helpless and terrified. But finally, just after dawn, he heard a new sound. The thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. Mary emerged from the bedroom, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Austin. A healthy, beautiful boy." He rushed into the bedroom to find Caroline propped up against the pillows, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "Austin, meet William." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at his son. William had dark hair like Caroline and what looked like Austin's nose. His tiny fists waved in the air as he continued to cry, outraged at being thrust into the cold world. "He is perfect," Austin whispered. "He is ours," Caroline said. "Our son, born free and safe." Over the next few years, life settled into a rhythm. The ranch prospered as Austin expanded operations, buying more land and cattle. Caroline started her school in town, teaching a dozen children in a room above the general store. William grew into an energetic toddler, then a rambunctious boy, full of curiosity and laughter. In 1878, they had a daughter, Grace, named for Caroline's grandmother. She was quieter than William, with Austin's blue eyes and Caroline's delicate features. 2 years after that came twin boys, Robert and James, who were identical and inseparable from birth. The ranch house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with new bedrooms added and a larger kitchen built. Caroline's garden flourished, providing vegetables for the table and flowers for the house. Austin built a barn that was the envy of the county, and their cattle brought good prices at market. But more than the material success, it was the love that filled their home that made it special. Austin and Caroline's relationship deepened with each passing year, growing stronger through shared challenges and joys. They still talked every evening, sitting on the porch after the children were in bed, discussing everything from philosophy to ranch business. "Do you ever think about how different your life would be if I had not collapsed at your gate?" Caroline asked one evening, 10 years after they had met. Austin pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. "I think about it sometimes. I would probably still be alone, working this ranch by myself, never knowing what I was missing. I think about it too. If I had not found you, I probably would have died in the desert, or worse, Charles would have found me and taken me back. Either way, I would not have this life, these children, this happiness. You were brave enough to run. That is what saved you. Maybe, but you were kind enough to help. That is what gave me hope." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains, the same mountains that had witnessed their first meeting all those years ago. By 1886, William was 10 years old and already working alongside his father on the ranch. Grace was 8, helping her mother with the younger children and showing an aptitude for teaching. The twins were 6, wild and adventurous, constantly getting into mischief, and Caroline was pregnant again. "I thought we were done," she said with a mixture of exasperation and joy when she told Austin the news. "Apparently not," he said, grinning. "What is one more? Easy for you to say. You are not the one carrying the baby and chasing 4 children around." But despite her complaints, Austin could see she was happy. They both were. Their 5th and final child, a daughter they named Rose, was born in early 1887. She was tiny and delicate, with red hair that came from nowhere anyone could determine. She completed their family in a way they had not known was missing. As the years passed and the children grew, Austin and Caroline watched with pride as they became their own people. William took over more of the ranch operations, showing a natural talent for the work. Grace became a teacher like her mother, opening a second school in a neighboring town. Robert became a blacksmith while James studied law. Rose, the baby, showed signs of becoming an artist, her drawings covering every surface in the house. Through it all, Austin and Caroline remained at the center of everything, the foundation upon which their family was built. They grew older together, their faces gaining lines and their hair turning gray, but the love between them never faded. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Austin took Caroline back to the spot where she had collapsed at his gate all those years ago. They stood together, holding hands, looking at the now well-maintained entrance to the ranch. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Caroline asked. "I said you are home now. And you were right, I was home, I just did not know it yet." She turned to face him, her green eyes still as bright and beautiful as they had been at 23. "Thank you, Austin, for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for trusting me. For being brave enough to accept my help. For building this life with me." They kissed, and it was as sweet and full of promise as their first kiss had been 25 years earlier. As they walked back to the house, where their children and grandchildren were waiting to celebrate with them, Austin felt a profound sense of gratitude. His life had turned out better than he ever could have imagined, all because a desperate woman had collapsed at his gate one Montana morning, begging for mercy. And he had given her mercy and love and a home, and she had given him everything in return. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Inside the house, he could hear laughter and music, the sounds of family and celebration. Caroline squeezed his hand and smiled up at him. "Ready to go face the chaos with you, always." They walked together into their home, into the warmth and light and love that they had built together. And Austin knew with absolute certainty that he would not change a single moment of their journey. From that first desperate morning to this joyful evening, every step had been worth it. As the door closed behind them and the sounds of celebration grew louder, Austin thought back to his promise all those years ago. "You are home now," he had told her, and she was. They both were, home together exactly where they belonged.